So this is continuing the broadcast that we began of the Khoodeelaar television channel, Baby Angel Geronimo editions. And what I was saying in the period that got kind of disconnected somehow, which I shall investigate and update on later, included a reference to my appearance on a satellite channel called Channel I Europe on the 11th of October 2011. Sorry, 2nd of October 2011. And the call made by a man called Haji Aftab, who said insularity words to the effect that this is the guest that you should have been inviting to your programs rather than anyone else, words to that effect. And what I have found is that in the subsequent period, that particular comment by Haji Aftab has been replaced by satanic noise that has completely drowned out that positive comment by Haji Aftab. I didn't have any contact with Haji Aftab for many years. So to have his comment be treated in that way was a double shock for me. So what I'm saying on the record is that whoever did that drowning out and distorting has committed a number of wrongs. And I'm going to follow up that particular incident legally as well as otherwise, because there are so many things that this individual has done wrong that need legal action about. So because of the interruption, I'll not repeat the exact length of my comment again here, except to say that that kind of act is the kind of prediction contained in the Surah Al-Isra in the Holy Quran, which contains references to the act of defiance by Satan and God's permission to Satan to try to delude man, that is to say human beings. So this was a delusion by the perpetrator, whoever did the perpetration of that drowning out of Haji Aftab comments, under the influence of Satan, under the influence of Waswas al-Khannas. Now, Waswas al-Khannas is a phrase that I used during 2018 in my, again, generously agreed appearances on the program presented by the same individual under the pretext that the individual made about defending the Crisp Street Market. Now, Crisp Street Market, to those who don't know London or don't know the UK, is a part of East London in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets, which would be more familiar to those who know about George Lansbury. Because George Lansbury was very temporarily, for a very brief period in the 1920s, was the leader of the Labour Party. He was a member of the parliament, and he was the leader of the Labour Party in the UK. He didn't stay leader for long, but he was a leader. And the reason why he became an MP and a leader was to do with the fact that while he was a member of the council in the then Poplar Borough Council, he and his colleague councillors had gone to jail. This is something unprecedented in the history of the UK. They went to jail for a principle. Shocking, but it's true. George Lansbury went to jail with his colleagues after opposing a then Tory policy of penalizing, punishing the poor people in the Poplar Borough. Well, other boroughs as well, but in Poplar, these particular councillors took that stand of opposing that penalizing policy. It has not happened since, and that happened in 1921. These councillors went to court, and the court actually sent them to jail. So George Lansbury became famous, and this is the part of London which is now known as the Lansbury ward of the London Borough of Tower Hamlets. That is named after George Lansbury. But I pay equal, in fact, if not more than equal, recognition to those councillors who are less known than George Lansbury became. And those other councillors, not all of them, but some of the other councillors drove the actual campaign against the Conservatives. So let's put it this way. The Conservative Party has been in power since 2010. It's 12 years now. It's coming to the same length of time that the Labour Party was in power from May 1997 up till they lost it in May 2010. Now, it is possible, it is conceivable to suggest that after the next general election in the UK, whenever that happens, the possibility, it's not a certainty, but it's a possibility or probability. Possibility, let's say, not necessarily probability either, that the Labour Party would defeat the Conservatives and get into power. That is the possibility that exists. Now, if that is actually translated into reality, and the Labour Party is the party in government after the next election, then it would not be any different from the Conservative Party. In fact, my diagnostic description of the leader of the Labour Party who has been in place since December, since the loss of the election of 2019 by the Labour Party. And this man has been the replacement leader after Jeremy Corbyn was kind of pushed out of the post of the leader. Now, I have called this man, Keir Starmer, the political murderer of the Labour Party. Keir Starmer is the political murderer of the Labour Party, and he would do the same thing to the poor people in hardship in this country, that the Conservatives did in the 1920s, which George Lansbury opposed and went to jail to oppose. 1920 to 2022, which is 101 years ago. And the popular market, crisp street market, in 2018 had significant number of traders who were Bangladeshis. Not all the traders are Bangladeshi, but the Bangladeshi traders featured in number. So there was this so-called campaign to stop the local Tar Hamlets Council attacking the crisp street market in order to kind of allow the crooks organization called Popular Haque, quote, degenerate the area. Degenerate is my word, which is a replacement for development. Because when the word development is used in England about properties, it is used in order to mislead the objective observer. Mislead the objective observer about the real purpose, the true purpose behind the program. So by calling it development, they actually carry out degeneration. So when I agreed to appear on the program, I made this point, and I made this point in every particular program that I appeared in during 2018. Now this individual, Shuaib, what's his name? His full name is Reza Ahmad Chaudhry alias Shuaib. What he managed to do was to find any excuse to bring on a conservative kind of member on the program, despite the fact that the conservative member had neither the intention to support the campaign against the degeneration of crisp street market, nor had the quality or the moral position. So an analysis of the broadcast by Shuaib Chaudhry would show that he managed to get on the programs a conservative member under any pretext. He also had his own wife, Anwara Ali, on the programs. Now, the contents analyzed of the contributions made by both those individuals would show that there would have been more effective and more rigorous participants if Shuaib Chaudhry wanted to give the program a neutral, non-partisan appearance. But he chose to bring those two instead of asking for a better contribution and better prepared, better committed people. If he did want that, he could have found the people. Now, what has happened since the Since the time, sometime in 2018, Shoaib Chaudhary lost the kind of control, I would say, of that particular satellite channel. He now broadcasts something on the internet that is not called Channel I Europe, but Channel Europe. So what I'm saying on the record is this, that various claims that Shoaib Chaudhary has made on the program should never have been made, because he has made contradictory statements, he has made false statements, and he has made partisan statements. Now, one of the things that he allowed somebody called Abdul Salik, who is no longer alive, to say without objecting to Abdul Salik saying that, was that all the campaigns for the defense of Brick Lane had been done by Oshikkhito Manch. What that means is that all the campaigns for the defense of Brick Lane were done and led by uneducated people, illiterate people. Now, that is as satanic a statement in stupidity, in dishonesty, in distortion and idiocy as can ever be found anywhere. Illiteracy, lack of education, is the opposite of any action that can be done by moral, ethical, socially aware persons and personnel. Now, Abdul Salik, who is dead now, was not entitled to say that, but he said that because he was himself deluded and he was under the direct influence of Satan. His stay in this country, Abdul Salik's stay in the UK, and I'm saying this on the record for the records, of course, Abdul Salik would not have been allowed to stay in the UK if it wasn't for me. I'm saying this. And Abdul Salik was in tears. When he appeared behind me, I didn't know him. So he gave me a salute from behind me as I was walking in New Road. And he gave me a loud salute from behind me as I was in the middle of crossing the street into one side of the road into the other. And he persuaded me in tearful way, he persuaded me to sit in a cafe nearby, whatever the cafe available was. And he gave me the story of his life. He said that the then member of parliament for the local area, now the deceased Peter Shore, Shore, had betrayed him when he, Abdul Salik, handed Peter Shore Abdul Salik's then passport, which was a forged passport or which was a forged document in terms of immigration. Abdul Salik told me that he arrived in the UK in 1970 by pretending to be somebody else or using somebody else's passport or a collection of words to that effect. And that when his immigration status was treated to a review by the Home Office, he approached the then local MP, which was Peter Shaw. And Peter Shaw asked him, or as a result of the communication between him and Peter Shaw, Abdul Salik gave the false passport or the false immigration documents about himself, that is Abdul Salik, to Peter Shaw. And what Peter Shaw did, according to the tale that Abdul Salik was telling me in that cafe in about July 1977, the first time I ever had any contact with him or knowledge about him, I had no knowledge about him. He's not from the same area as I am, and he was not from my generation or from my group or acquaintance or whatever, so I didn't know him. So tearfully, Abdul Salik told me that Peter Shaw, the traitor, had sold him, shopped him to the Home Office. And the Home Office had issued Abdul Salik, instead of with an exemption or with a kind of permission to stay, because that's what Abdul Salik had hoped Peter Shaw's intervention would produce for him. The Home Office had ordered him to leave the country. So it was a deportation order that the UK Home Office issued on Abdul Salik. Now that was the account that Abdul Salik was giving me in the meeting that he organized by following me from behind. As I said, I had no idea who he was, and I had no reason to know who he was. He was nothing to do with anything I had done or I was involved in doing. And in the period that I was there, up to 77, I had never seen him anywhere doing anything for the community or society or anything. Well, I had led the campaign against the Sunday Times article in 1973, attacking the Siloti community and Brick Lane. Now, there was no appearance of Abdul Salik anywhere in Brick Lane. So for him to say to Shoaib Chowdhury or Razama Chowdhury Shoaib on the television program that Shoaib was presenting with me as a guest, that Brick Lane had been defended by Oshikito Manush. Now, where do I begin to express my outrage? Shoaib himself has not been seen anywhere defending anything. And he most certainly was not there in 1973. Shoaib was not in the UK in 1973. He came in the late 1980s or early 1990s. So here is one stranger to the community allowing a complete liar like Abdul Salik. This is for the record. Anyone who challenges what I'm saying must know that I do not tell lies and I will not call somebody a liar if I do not have evidence. Abdul Salik's cries to me for help are recorded in terms in the communications that are on the record available. Anyone who thinks they are being crafty must not try to distort the records. Too many people in the community know about Abdul Salik's weeping and crying for years until I forced Peter Shaw to intervene, and I'll come to that in a minute. What happened in the periods since Abdul Salik tearfully approached me in 1977 up to sometime in 1980 when Abdul Salik was given the permission to stay, is absolutely telling, fascinating. Abdul Salik has got website that has got absolute lies published about his friends. And those lies are not written by him. Those lies are written by other people he paid money to write. He could not even write the proper Bengali thing. One of the persons he paid to write is somebody called Usman Ghani. Usman Ghani came to the UK in 1976, as far as I'm concerned. And he only stayed in the UK by marrying a woman from Birmingham. Well, not from Birmingham, but a woman whose family was based in Birmingham, but whose family was from Sylhet, of course. And Usman Ghani, before he came to the UK, was working in a company that was owned by, it's blood-related relation of mine. It is absolutely important to understand that. I am not claiming any political relationship or social relationship with my relation. It's just a biological relationship. This boy who owned the company is called Ghosh. And Ghosh became an MP in Bangladesh belonging to Ershad's party. Now, Ghosh is a blood-related nephew of mine. That's it. I have no political or social connection with him whatsoever. But Ghosh is related to me, relative to me. And Ghosh's older brother, Motlib, owned the Globe Pharmacy in Sylhet, Zindabazar. Now, that Globe Pharmacy was funded by my family and a later relation, Moinuddin Khan. I'll come to all of those in due course. Moinuddin Khan was the commissioner of Chittagong division in East Pakistan that I exposed in a newspaper article that I published in January 1970 for principle. Now, Moinuddin Ahmad Khan was related to me as an uncle because he was the older brother of the wife of my youngest uncle. So he was related to me, but I would not allow him to do the wrong thing by abusing his position as the divisional commissioner. So I challenged him and I exposed him. So I overtook him. I overtook him and I exposed him and I stopped him about the motorway or the road going to Bianibazar through Chandrapur. Now, Abdul Salik tearfully approached me throughout the whole of that 3 years and tearfully told me how the traitor, Peter Shaw, he was using the term traitor about Peter Shaw, betrayed him. At that time, Abdul Salik never mentioned to me any friendship with Dan Jones. And it was Dan Jones and Paul Beasley, who was the leader of the Town Hamlets Council at the time, that together had colluded with Peter Shaw to deport Abdul Salik to Germany, that I prevented. The things I do are not done by ordinary campaigners. These are not done by even, now they are called KSCs, QCs or barristers. These are impossible things that I do, and they can only be done by the likes of me and my great grandfather, the Saint Bedshah. These are unheard of things. Now, Abdul Salik should not have known of me at all. So for him to follow me in New Road was quite a surprise. So how did he know me? Because I had only then, recently, that is July 1977, defeated the UK Home Secretary at the time, Marlin Rees. It's not done by a solicitor or a barrister or whatever. It was done by me, doing the campaign in the right way. And Abdul Salik was absolutely fetished by fame. He thought I was being famous. I was not being famous. I was being natural. So Abdul Salik did his research and conspired, and he was stalking me. He must have been stalking me, because the point, Fieldgate Street, where he kind of stopped me from behind by giving me a loud salute, is not or was not his home. His home at the time was Cannon Street Road. So he should not have been walking in New Road at the time, particularly when I was walking in New Road. I had featured in the Guardian, not just a small item, in the front page of the Guardian in 1977, when the Home Office, fronted by Marlin Rees, caved into me because they lied and they got caught in the lie. The fact that the Home Office lied at the time is on the record. Anyone in the Home Office, Suella, do you want to confront me with the evidence? I will give the further details in due course if Suella Braverman challenges me or the permanent secretary of any of the races in the Home Office. So when Abdul Salik became aware of me, he was aware of somebody that he had never encountered. Somebody politically more effective than Peter Shaw. That's why he confronted me in the most friendly, submissive, servile way that he did in 1977, literally within the day or two of my news being featured on the front page of the Guardian. Now, the piece in the Guardian on the front page about me was byline to what the private eye calls sweetie. Where is the sweetie racist? Because that racist I later encountered at the Institute of Contemporary Arts in a debate. Now, nobody has been to the Institute of Contemporary Arts ever from the Bangladeshi community, let alone challenging anyone there. I challenged so many creeps in there, including Field Marshal Ayub Khan's top civil servant, Altaf Gohar, the liar, with whom I had a shouting match at the Institute of Contemporary Arts. Come to that update in due course. So Abdul Salik tearfully followed me in the Fieldgate Street. And he never mentioned, in the 3 years that followed, he never mentioned his, quote, friend, Dan Jones. Now, Dan Jones then features in Abdul Salik's Facebook posts or the posts that are contained in the Facebook account run in the name of Abdul Salik. So the pictures show the Abdul Salik sitting in the middle, and on either side is Dan Jones and his so-called wife. Now, this wife is not his wife. He may have been married to this woman, but he was not married at the time. He has not been married to Denise Jones for a very, very long time indeed. Because Denise Jones is widely known as the mistress of Michael Crook, not the wife of Dan Jones. And yet Abdul Salik creates a lie by sitting between them and getting that stupid false picture posted on the Facebook account in his name, saying, the caption says, my friends. They're not his friends. These are two races that he sucked up to after he got the permission from the Home Office, and he then exploited, let's say blackmailed Dan Jones into going with him to Bangladesh and taking part in the migration of Abdul Salik's mother and Abdul Salik's wife and children to Britain. Now, Abdul Salik could never have blackmailed Dan Jones into doing any of that had it not been for the fact that I had compelled Dan Jones and Peter Shaw to do the absolute impossible for Abdul Salik to stay in this country. It was me. How did I do that? There are witnesses still alive who witnessed what I did to force Dan Jones to do the impossible for Abdul Salik. It was an evening, it was the evening before the day when Paul Beasley and Dan Jones had plotted to send Abdul Salik to Germany. That is to say, that was the part deportation that they were doing on the advice of Peter Shaw. So when Abdul Salik told me that this is what Paul Beasley and Dan Jones had done, I then went to Dan Jones's house in Cable Street, accompanied by at least 4 of my students at the time. Abdul Salam is dead now, but the others are still alive. And they will testify to that. And other people in the community who went to that meeting with me will testify to that. So the conversation went like this. I said to Dan Jones, where is Peter Shaw? And Dan Jones said he's out of London. Can you imagine? And I said, you are lying. And Dan Jones denied it. I said, ring him. And Dan Jones rang him right there and right then. And he got Shaw on the line, or at least he got the confirmation the Shaw was in London. So I said to Dan Jones that if anything happens to Abdul Salik, if he is removed from the UK, then very serious political trouble will happen in East London. I can't remember the exact words, but words to that effect I spoke. I said, get in touch with Paul Beasley as well. So between the 3 of them, these morons organized a hectic rescue operation, and the Abdul Salik's deportation order was completely reversed, revoked, and Abdul Salik stayed. So for Abdul Salik to then phone Shoaib Chowdhury's program and say that Oshikito Manshe Bricklane Re Rokka Khorsan, Bricklane Andolon Khorsan was not an ordinary lie. It was evil, satanic act of ingratitude which cannot be condemned deeply enough. It wasn't Dan Jones, it wasn't Denise Jones, it wasn't anybody else. It was Muhammad Haque. So I could update on other cases, which I shall do in due course. But this is something that Shoaib Chowdhury owes an apology for. He must apologize to me for not asking Abdul Salik to withdraw that remark. And Shoaib Chowdhury owes me an apology for another call made by somebody who made a completely stupid comment. That somebody was also someone that I had helped in an impossible way. So when the television channel, so-called Channel S, which is short for slave, Channel Slavery and Channel Servile, was being prepared, it wasn't actually called Channel S. It was being mooted and called Channel Sylhet or Sylhet Channel on the satellite platform. Sometime in 2004, I was sitting in the video shop owned by Turon Mia in Brick Lane. And Turon Mia said to me, Bhai Sahab, and then he introduced me to this child that I now know or since have known called Firdaus Jalil, Mahi Firdaus Jalil. He said that Tain Saitra একটা Siloti channel করতাম. Then I said, what are the main reasons for your starting a channel called Sylhet and what is the purpose? In the course of the conversation, this Mahi Firdaus Jalil made an astonishing, absolutely astonishing claim. He said that he was experiencing trouble finding the right kind of people to run the channel. Because among the Sylhetis, there were hardly any talented or skilled people. So I told him that he was being stupid and insulting the Sylhetis and yet calling the channel Sylhet channel. But of course, that was 2004. Some years before this criminal was prosecuted for fraud and convicted and jailed. Now, if I told these people about this criminal boy being a criminal, congenital criminal, they wouldn't believe me, would they? Now, when the COVID spread, some shops in Brick Lane and some shops in Tower Hamlets, Bangladeshi shops, whose main customers are Bangladeshis, increased their prices. And in a broadcast, this Mahi Firdaus Jalil accused the Hindus. He said these shopkeepers are actually related to Hindus, or they're children of Hindus, or Hindu blood, they've got Hindu blood or something. How did you work that out? So correctly, the Hindu community were outraged, and eventually, I'm cutting a long story short in here, the Mahi Fardaus Jalil broadcast an abject apology to the Hindus. Now, this is the background to the individual that Lutfur Rahman, the executive mayor at the expense of Tar Hamlets, owes a lot to, and so on and so on and so on. So when somebody writes to me, like a former councillor wrote to me, I'll bring up that letter and I'll read that, requesting me to appear on a program. I did the necessary rigorous check, and this man, the former councillor, is called, what is his name? I'll check that name and I'll come up with the name. He requested me to appear on a program on a channel that I had not any connection with. And when I checked with him as to the reason why he wanted me to appear on the program, he was not able to answer the questions. And I shall discuss all of that in this edition if the connection is not broken or interrupted again. So when I published, subsequent to that, not connected with that particular invitation or request to me, when I published an independent piece sometime after that, condemning the ethnicity-linked outlets of corruption and criminality and dishonesty, the so-called owner of that channel then circulates an email to a number of people challenging my integrity, challenging my claims, and referring to me insultingly. It's the same kind of attitude. So when Shoaib Chaudhary contacted me during his resumed or resurrected kind of career as the presenter of Channel Europe, he mentioned to me a conversation he had with this so-called owner. And Shoaib Chaudhary claimed credit for advising the so-called owner from taking any hostile action against me. I'm saying this on the record. It is not up to Shoaib Chaudhary to do that. That individual will be deterred by his own record, and that will be presented to him sooner than Shoaib Chaudhary or he expects. So what I'm saying here is that the whole idea on which the Khoodeelaar campaign is based, the defense of the community, this idea is unique to us. This is not anything to do with any other group or organization, all of which, and I assert, all of which are engaged in servitude, slavery, mental slavery, and stupidity of indescribable description. For example, the current, today is what? Today is Saturday, the 17th of September, and this is UK time 4:25, and the GMT is 3:25 GMT. And in less than 2 days' time, there will be this extended UK-wide exhibition of mass brainwashing. I mean, people all over the UK are being shown on television and being reported in the so-called press as being uncontrollably emotionally kind of overcome personally by the loss of Brenda. Now, Brenda has passed away at age 96. Now, none of these people, absolutely overwhelming numbers of the majority of the people, would have known Brenda as their kith or their kin or their relation. So why would they be so overcome? I mean, there is a report, or there are reports about the same kind of claim, that the queue for seeing Brenda's body stretching from Southwark to Westminster. And people who have been interviewed at random on the queues have admitted that they would have done this even if it took longer than the current wait. And there are reports about 10 miles, whatever the length. How realistic is it? It's not one person, it's millions of people in this country, in the United Kingdom, that are currently, queuing up all over the place, either to see Brenda's body or to see somebody else related to Brenda. Like in Wales, people have in the last few days been seen in the queues, formed in the queues to shake hands with or have a glimpse of Brian, Brenda's eldest son, who is now King Charles III. I mean, how open, how brazen, and how complete should the brainwashed be exhibited as being brainwashed for the objective observer from the outer space to know that this is a brainwashed island? Remember, in the last year or so, we have used the term Little Englanders. I mean, this is the perfect physical daily exhibition of Little England being completely prostrate. I mean, since Brenda passed away, even the Scottish nationalists have been prostrate and weeping and tearful and all the other things at her loss. Now, you know this, any observer of events surrounding Fleet Street's coverage against Meghan Markle, especially the contents of the vitriolic, poisonous attacks on Meghan Markle by the Daily Mail group, would know how hostile they have been to her. Yes? Now, the Daily Mail has not published anything as hostile, but it has been publishing indifferent things that can be kind of interpreted as being hostile to Meghan Markle. The Sun has actually given a piece. Let me just, the Sun on Friday ran the front page saying that Harry would be allowed to wear a uniform for a few minutes. Now, These are not friends of Meghan or Harry, but even they are being kind of how shall I say, moderate in their hostility, because the atmosphere is one of submission to Brenda's image. So Brenda is being treated as a deity, much bigger than the Pope, much bigger than anything that this island has ever known in terms of clerical, that is to say, religious, Christian religious kind of mass exhibition. So most of these people on the island don't have any relationship with this, biological relationship with this Brenda's family. So isn't it even more astonishing to read that Lutfur Rahman, Tower Hamlet's current incumbent in the corrupt post of elected mayor, has been personally expressing personal remorse at the loss of Brenda. How to condemn this kind of outrageous, absolute falsehood and lies? Then you go over to Newham, next door, and you see that Roxana Fiaz, the daughter of Pakistani family, is equally personally full of remorse at the loss of Brenda. And there is a Facebook post run by a man called Abu Tahir. I know him as Abu Tahir, but he styles himself as Kalam Chowdhury. Before he became a Chowdhury, he used to be styling himself as Sinkaphony, Abu Tahir Sinkaphony. Now, Sinkaphon is a village in Molbi Bazar in Silot. Quite how the Sinkaphony became a Chowdhury is a mystery, just as mysterious as the fact that Abu Tahir says that he's part of the community that has been deeply shocked and moved and kind of saddened by the loss of Brenda's. How is he related to Brenda? This is the man who used to be associated with Lutfur Rahman on the records as the chair of the party that is called Aspire Party. Now, as I have asserted, aspire is the word that has been used by me on the internet before the Aspire Party was named Aspire by whoever aspired to that name, and that is subject to legal action and legal notice, which I shall be updating on in due course. So this program is now how old it is. This is just under 1 hour. The expression of solidarity and remorse and all these other things cannot be justifiably kind of accepted if made as a plastic formula. There is a number of published sources saying that local councils right across the country, England that is, are expressing similar regret and sadness at the loss of Brenda's. Now let's take this back through the period. Not 70 years, but let's take currently the trial of the intruder, the Sikh-born intruder, who tried to, according to the claims, tried to assassinate Brenda while she was alive in retaliation for the Jallianwala, the Amritsar massacre, or the Jallianwala Bagh massacre by General Dyer. This is happening right now. This particular perpetrator, or the kind of attempted murder plotter, is due to be in the news in a big way when he's probably sentenced or given some kind of noticeable punishment. And in a piece published by the Guardian, by their byline to their reporter in India, in Delhi, they said there is no closure about Jallianwala Bagh, Dyer's murder of these people, innocent people in Punjab. How is that appropriate? Closure. It's not about a closure. If even expressing an opinion against or about a prejudiced individual who happens to be Jewish, if that can be amounting to, or if that can be treated as amounting to anti-Semitism, how is it that the massacre by Dyer of innocent people in the Punjab can be treated as something only needing closure, not trial of the perpetrators for massacre? Think about the choice of words in the Guardian. And the Guardian is the nearest thing to the liberal kind of platform apparently available in the UK, in a country full of brainwashed zombies and racists. The Guardian tries to pretend to be not as racist, as brainwashed as the Daily Mail, the Sun, the Daily Express, the Daily Telegraph, etc. Jallianwala Bagh massacre. I shall be updating on that in due course. I think I'll take a 1-minute break from the camera to get a device so that I can do the research and find more details about the massacre during this program. Okay, so I've got the device and let's see if the research works. All right, this item is dated on 13th of April 1919, and it says Jallianwala Bagh massacre. And underneath that is a Wikipedia entry on this one, yeah? So it's the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Doesn't say the date of this entry, but the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, also known as the Amritsar massacre. I said earlier Amritsar riot, I actually should have said massacre, took place on the 13th of April 1919. So that would be 23 years, 123 years, 3 years, 103 years ago. A large, notice even the Wikipedia entry says that a large, peaceful crowd had gathered at the Jallianwala Bagh, in Amritsar, Punjab, to protest against the Rowlatt Act and arrest of pro-independence activists Saifuddin Kichlu and Satyapal. In response to the public gathering, the temporary Brigadier General R.E.H. Daya surrounded the protesters with his Sikh, Gurkha, Baluch, and Rajput soldiers from the 2nd and the 9th Gurkhas, the 54th Sikhs, and the 59th Sindh Rifles of British Indian Army. Look at how extensive the slavery was on this part of these soldiers. The Jallianwala Bagh could only be exited on one side. That particular, as its other 3 sides were enclosed by buildings. After blocking the exit with his troops, he ordered the troops to shoot at the crowd, continuing to fire even as the protesters tried to flee. The troops kept on firing until their ammunition was exhausted. These are Baluch, Gurkha, and Sikh soldiers shooting at Sikh, Punjabi, Muslim, ordinary protesters trying to flee, trying to save themselves. The Jallianwala Bagh could only be exited on one side, as its other 3 sides were enclosed by buildings. After blocking the exit with his troops, he ordered them to shoot at the crowd, continuing to fire even as the protesters tried to flee. The troops kept on firing until their ammunition was exhausted. Think about that. Estimates of those killed vary between 379 and 1,500 people plus, and over 1,200 other people were injured, of whom 192 were seriously injured. Responses polarized both the British and the Indian peoples. Anglo-Indian author Rudyard Kipling declared at the time that Daya did his duty as he saw it. This incident shocked Rabindranath Tagore, an Indian polymath and the first Asian Nobel laureate, to such an extent that he renounced his knighthood. The massacre caused a re-evaluation by the British Army of its military role against civilians to minimal force whenever possible. Although later British actions during the Mau Mau rebellion in the Kenyan colony have led historian Hugh Bennett to comment that the new policy could be put aside. The army was restrained and they developed less violent tactics for crowd control. The level of casual brutality and lack of any accountability stunned the entire nation. And what happened in the UK was not anything new, because although there was a vote against Dyer in the House of Commons, there was an ineffective inquiry together with the initial accolades for Dyer, fueled great widespread anger against the British among the Indian populace, leading to the non-cooperation movement of 1922 to 22. Some historians consider the episode a decisive step towards the end of British rule in India. Britain has never formally apologized for the massacre, but expressed deep regret in 2019. So, this is the history. Even now, they haven't actually apologized for the massacre and the brutality and the casual brutality. And even Winston Churchill, when he spoke, he called the Jallianwala Bagh massacre unutterably monstrous. And what happened in the 190 years of the empire since 1757 is not acknowledged even by the Guardian, not in the piece that this individual based in Delhi wrote about the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Now, going back to Brenda and the expression of personal remorse by these series of morons, what relationship have they had? What relationships does any of them have with a single racist or a single kind of supporter of the empire of the racist regimes? They don't even have relationship with their own families. And going back to the contents of the Surah Al-Isra, when God told Satan that Satan, was permitted to try to delude man, meaning human beings, he must have considered the possibility of the likes of Boris Johnson being included among the men that Satan would delude. And Boris Johnson is duly deluded in that sense, as in the Quran. Because when the former French ambassador to the UK, the court of St. James's, wrote a book after she retired, or published a book after she retired, she was interviewed by the Times in London, although she wrote quite a number of pieces in the New SS, this New Statesman so-called. In none of those pieces in the New SS had she made the memorable phrase describing Johnson, which I have used extensively since, which is that Boris Johnson is congenital liar. Let's see what she actually said. Well, congenital liar is not far from pathological liar, but let's say we focus on the congenital liar for the time being, and we shall come to baby angel Geronimo. Now, here is a piece, an YouTube piece, dated, well, I can't see the date at this stage, but it's headed, Boris Johnson is a pathological liar, where she has replaced the word congenital with the word pathological. It's the piece by byline to Isabel Oakeshott. And it's dated the 5th of July 2022. And there have been 4,693 views of the piece. And it says, an ex-senior civil servant says number 10 is not telling the truth about formal complaints over Chris Pincher's behavior. Talk TV's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. I think we now all know we have a pathological liar as Prime Minister. And there are pieces here. Boris Johnson needs to go, says Conservative MP, 2 months ago. And Boris Johnson on the brink as dozens of his ministers resigned, BBC News, 2 months ago. And UK Ministers Rishi Sunak and Sajid Javid resigned from government, BBC News, 2 months ago. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson delivers resignation speech 2 months ago. Boris Johnson resigns, a look back at his political career, Wall Street Journal, 2 months ago. King Charles and siblings hold vigil by the Queen's coffin in Westminster. That's a different one. So Boris Johnson, I'm still looking for that French ex-ambassador's congenital liar quote. I've not found it yet, but I'm still looking while broadcasting. Right, this is the piece that I was looking for. It's dated on the Times website, 27th of February, 2021. And this is the piece that is headed Sylvie Berman. Yes, Boris is a congenital liar. The Sylvie Berman is the name of the woman that was the UK sort of France's ambassador to the United Kingdom. So it was a Saturday, 27th of February 2021. And the piece says Saturday interview. Sylvie Berman, yes, Boris is a congenital liar, and your country has decided to scuttle itself. And it says she was criticized this week for her verdict on the prime minister, but France's former ambassador remains unsparing and unrepentant. Charles Bremner writes. So here is the first paragraph of that Charles Bremner write-up. It's not every day that the ambassador of one of Britain's closest allies calls the Prime Minister a congenital liar. Sylvie Berman, who was until 2017 France's envoy at the court of St. James's, is amused by the fuss in London over her portrait of Boris Johnson as a clever but reckless opportunist with no regard for the truth. Now, who else is known as clever as well as a liar? Of course, it's Satan, Iblis. Iblis was very clever, and he was a liar because he was lying about God's order. Johnson, Sylvie Berman wrote in her new book, Goodbye Britannia, Johnson lies to embellish reality, lies as a game, but also as an instrument of power. A shower of Brexiteer wrath has been lobbed back across the channel this week. I have come in for the usual stuff. Without us, you would still be under the Third Reich, and so on. Berman says, talking in her flat. In the course of the interview, anyway, because of the paywall, that is the extent to which this particular item can be read online. Now, it doesn't matter because I've said the main thing there, that Boris Johnson is one of the depraved, deluded, or deludeds that Satan or Iblis has been permitted to delude. And Boris Johnson, the fact that Boris Johnson is no longer in post proves the point that despite his craftiness and his belief that he is forever the winner, he is not the winner, and he is not crafty, he is not powerful, he is not intelligent enough to delude other people. Well, the other people may delude themselves in other ways, but Boris Johnson is not the lead deluder at the moment. Not anymore, not for the time being anyway. So when Shoaib Chaudhry said to me that white people don't commit adultery and they have high standard or whatever compared to the Bangladeshis in the context of Shoaib Chaudhry, of course Shoaib Chaudhry was speaking untruth or ignorantly, because it's not just Boris Johnson personally who is an industrial scale adulterer, but the behavior of Chris Pincher, the behavior of the whole lot of other people that are all white and are sexually deviant and sexually perverted and adulterous and dishonest, shows that Shoaib Chaudhry doesn't know the white people, or that Shoaib Chaudhry doesn't know the Bangladeshis. This is on the record, and I'm hoping that only the teller of the truth will come back and try to offer an on the record rejoinder to each of the issues that I'm asserting. As I said, when we did the campaign against the Home Office, well, I did the campaign against Marlene Rees. I started the campaign against Marlene Rees in 1976. Marlene Rees was the Home Secretary. And I succeeded in having his racist, ignorant decision overturned by campaign by July 1977. There has been no campaign like that by anybody from the subcontinent. Nobody else has been doing the campaigns in the way that I do. So when Shoaib Chaudhry says, I have been here, he says, in quoting Shoaib Chaudhry, I have been here for 30 years or 35 years. He suggests thereby that by being in some country or some place automatically amounts to his doing remarkable campaigns and remarkable things that other people have been doing and are being noted for. Now, that cannot be right. You can be sitting in some place for as long as, let's say, in the British Library. When Karl Marx was using the British Library in Bloomsbury, there must have been other people sitting in the same library, not necessarily in the same table, but in the same library. How many of them, Karl Marx's contemporaries in Bloomsbury's British Library, are known now? Not a single one. Not without undertaking a very deep research about who else was there in the Bloomsbury British Library when Karl Marx was having to use the British Library and was using the British Library. So say in Brick Lane, I have been doing campaigns every day because I've been talking to people about the future of Brick Lane, future of the community, future of the needs of the community, how to protect it from another attack or other attacks, or how to defend people being attacked daily, not on a grand scale, but on a daily practical level. And Shoaib Chowdhury has been walking past every day, let's say. But he has not been talking about any of these things that I've been talking about. He has not been engaging in mobilizing any number of people as I have been doing. So if at the end of the period, let's say 1 year, I say that I've talked in the last 1 year on 300 occasions, and I've spoken to any number of people, including 600 or 900 people about this issue, that issue. Does it mean that Shoaib Chowdhury has been doing the same thing? Unless he has been doing something like that, it doesn't mean the same thing at all. And so on. In January, I think 2010, I agreed to chair a public meeting held in a restaurant in Brick Lane. I was requested to go to that restaurant by one of my pupils. Now, my pupils is not a reference to somebody in an institution called a school or a college or university. My people is, in the widest possible sense of the term, education in the community. So this particular individual people requested me to go to that restaurant. And as soon as I arrived at that restaurant in Brick Lane, I was requested by Abdul Salik, who was present, and Usman Goni, who was present, to chair the event. Now, I don't know what the subtlety was, but that was the request which I, in good faith, accepted. And during the proceedings, I noticed that Abdul Salik passed on to one of his two sons a video camera to record the whole event, which his son did. Now, after the meeting, I asked Abdul Salik to give me a copy of that. And Abdul Salik promised to give me a copy of that. And I asked him again and again and again and again and again over a period of months. And Abdul Salik, every time, promised to give me a copy of that. He never did. After he went to Bangladesh, his other son promised to me to get hold of the copy and give it to me. And he never did. Now, this broadcast is on the record, isn't it? and it's covered by all the broadcasting regulations and the laws. And I'm saying that that recording belongs to me because it recorded my chairing of that meeting. And I didn't invite Abdul Saliq's son to record it. Abdul Saliq decided to do that. Now, in the period between 1980 and let's say that date, Abdul Saliq got the permission because of me in 1980. So 1980 to 1990, 2000, 2010, so 30 years, Abdul Saliq invited me to, let's say, dozens, not hundreds, but dozens of so-called cultural events that he organized. And I found that he was secretly recording my presence without making me aware of that or seeking my permission. The Abdul Saliq was stealing my data. Now, it's an offense to do that. It was an offense then, and it is a greater offense now. So I'm telling anyone who is interested in defending Abdul Saliq against my assertions to do the simple thing, to collect all the data, all the videos and audios that contain my participation and presence, to make the whole lot available to me. If they don't make those available to me voluntarily, then of course legal action would have to be taken. Now, Abdul Saliq has been shown as having recorded me because in the Facebook account, there are very small numbers of items that show me as being there. I had not seen those until I saw those on Abdul Saliq's Facebook post. Now, going back to the absolutely untruthful, evil claim by Abdul Saliq that অশিক্ষিত মানুষের ব্রিকলেন protect করছেন. How many I think I'm being interrupted again. So this will be another reason why I have to stop this now because of the interruption. So it will be continued. This is being ended at 14 hours GMT.